With us now, Doug Eldridge, sports agent, analyst, and public relations advisor. Doug, what public relations advice is the University of Alabama following?
You know, I should couch everything that I say, Leland, by saying that I extend just prayerful empathy to Miss DeCarlo. You know, I couldn't see her picture, but hearing her voice and obviously doing the prep for this segment, I had to FaceTime my 5-year-old little boy before coming here. This is something that I can certainly relate to. My family's from Alabama, and I know exactly the area where this took place. In terms of the public relations response by the University of Alabama, I don't think it could have possibly been handled more poorly, because we're talking about the dichotomy right now of the court of law and the court of public opinion. Now, the court of law, the wheels of justice often move slowly, but in the court of public opinion, it moves swiftly and often renders a damning result. But what they're doing is only amplifying the problem and blurring the optics around this situation, from the things that are said and unsaid by the coach, to the approach taken by the athletic director, to the nonsensical introduction over the weekend by Miller himself. There is clearly a presumption of innocence afforded to Miller and anyone else in his situation. And let's just call balls and strikes here. He is afforded a presumption of innocence unless and until proven otherwise. But in the court of public opinion, they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Well,
Poor word choice, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, you are afforded the right to an attorney and the presumption of innocence and all sorts of things in a court of law. Alabama is not held to the standards of the courts, nor are they held to a requirement to give anybody a presumption of innocence. You have no right to play on the basketball team. They can bench you. They can pull you. They can say, hey, look, we need to take some time and figure this out. My answer is it just all comes down to money.
Well, I think generally speaking, though, to do that, first of all, you're right. However, in the absence of a clear violation of team policy or university policy, which thus far I'm privy to the same information you are, the university has not said that Miller, however head-scratching his actions are on the night in question and as recently as this weekend, he hasn't clearly violated team policy or school policy. So any suspension or sitting him would have to be subject to that violation. And so that's why I think thus far, clearly there are amplifying circumstances. The fact that they're number 2, the fact that they clinched the SEC, the fact that this guy's a top 4 draft pick, legal liability, like she just said. I couldn't agree more. I was nodding. But in the absence of a violation of school or team policy, they're in a tough position to make an arbitrary suspension, no matter how much sense it might make to the viewing audience.
Okay, forgive me. Maybe that says more about the policies than it does about the decision. Really. I mean, if you can exercise that poor a judgment and it doesn't violate any code of conduct, it says a lot about the code of conduct and how loosely it's written to allow for situations just like this. This is Nate Oates, who, shall we say, has not exactly covered himself in glory, the coach of the Alabama team, trying to explain away the walkout video and introduction that we saw. Take a listen.
They explained to me that it's like when TSA checks you before you get on a plane, and now Brandon's cleared for takeoff. We, as the adults in the room, should have been more sensitive to how it could have been interpreted. And I dropped the ball. That's it. I dropped the ball on it.
You think? Let me put it in a different way for you. I feel like if you're Nate Oates, you got a simple decision. You play Brandon Miller, you get bad publicity. You bench Brandon Miller, which he has every right to do as the coach. Just says, sorry, you're not starting. It's his prerogative. It's his team. Anything that's deleterious to the team camaraderie or bringing disgrace or discredit to the university, you can be benched for. If you bench Brandon Miller, you lose your job as Nate Oates because your team starts losing.
Right. Yeah, it's a clear catch-22 for the university, the individual, and everyone involved. And it hinges so clearly on the court of law. Now, the situation we're in right now might be completely different 24 hours or 2 weeks from now as evidence continues to roll out. But as it currently is, he's in a position where he has to abide by school and athletic department codes of conduct, however those are or are not written. Now, the problem, though, Leland, is the way he's handling this. This is an absolute vacuum of leadership by Oates and others involved. For him to kick the can down the road and say, well, I didn't know that they'd been doing it all year. This is the first I've heard of it. You have an entire half a bench of assistant coaches and the row immediately behind them. This is the University of Alabama. This is the definition of athletic-based leadership from Saban to Paul Bear Bryant generations before. For this can to be kicked down the road, that's inexcusable. These are unforced errors that this team is committing in the court of public opinion. This has to stop. This is magnifying an already horrible discussion and situation. The closest parallel, I was thinking back over the last couple of years, heading into the draft. I don't know if you remember Lyle Collins. He was a big offensive lineman out of LSU in 2015, I believe. And just before the draft, LSU police or Louisiana police said that they wanted to talk to him about the shooting death of a girl that he knew and or had a relationship with, even though he had no relation to the shooting and was not a person of interest, much less a suspect. Collins was going to be a first-round top 10 draft pick. He ended up being completely undrafted, lost tens, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. Now he, played for the Bengals. He's a Super Bowl offensive lineman. But there's certainly a parallel track here.
Yeah,
so if Miller continues to do foolish juvenile things like he did with the pat down and the intros and stuff like that, he too could go the way of Collins, and that's keeping it on the court of basketball and the court of public opinion. Not the least of which is to say, who knows what's going to happen in the court of law moving forward.
You have a long and extensive resume. We introduced it. I'm going to add diplomat to your titles here after this interview. We appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thank you, friend. Good to see you.